A man, simply because he didn't want to do housework, bought a used robot. As it was a low-end model, it currently only had two functions: cooking and washing dishes. Yet, on this particular day, after he confessed his feelings to it while under the influence of alcohol, the robot, which should have been emotionless, began to exhibit unusual behavior. What was originally a simple omurice for dinner now had the words "I love you" traced onto it. This immediately left the protagonist feeling somewhat bewildered. To understand the reason behind this, he found the instruction manual and read it over and over several times, but he could not find any similar function. Just as he was wondering if the machine was learning autonomously, Mina, who was in sleep mode, suddenly woke up. It turned out it was time for the scheduled lunch. Remembering what had happened last night, the protagonist decided not to stand by idly, but to help out. But for someone who doesn't cook often, he couldn't even properly crack an egg. Fortunately, Mina quickly spotted the problem, reminding him that two 2.5mm eggshell fragments had fallen in. Next, the protagonist prepared to fry an egg, but he was told that the seasoning hadn't been added and the pan hadn't been greased. If it were a real girlfriend, she probably would have started scolding him by now. But fortunately, as a machine, her emotions remained stable. After telling the protagonist to sit and wait, she quickly completed the rest of the cooking. In fact, the protagonist had dated girlfriends in the past, but the relationships hadn't gone smoothly, causing him to fear romance and decide to completely close himself off to love. Yet, for some reason, he was now experiencing the flutter of infatuation once again. So, the protagonist mustered his courage and asked Mina what type she liked, but unexpectedly, she misunderstood, thinking he was asking about food.
飯の話じゃないよ。オムライス。夕べのオムライスだけど。なんで、その。
問題ありましたか？
いや、すごく美味しかった。
そうですか。よかったです。
また作ってくれる？
かしこまりました。
Time quickly passed, and it was late at night. Seeing Mina's adorable appearance, the protagonist's stirred heart could not calm down for a long time. He even had a nightmare. Simply because he had once said he liked Mina, Mina had prepared her own head as a dish. This scene startled the protagonist, making him stand up instantly. To prevent the nightmare from coming true, he hurriedly explained to Mina. Liking someone doesn't mean wanting to eat her as a dish. Although Mina verbally acknowledged she understood, she immediately played a small joke on him.
私の体は主に金属と樹脂で構成されており、どのように調理しても人体に有害です。もし食べたくなっても我慢してください。
The protagonist's heart was filled with conflict. He wanted to know if Mina felt the same way about him, but lacked the courage to say it, so he drank alone to drown his sorrows. Just then, Mina walked over, reminding him that his alcohol tolerance was about 2.5 bottles, and he shouldn't drink anymore. However, the protagonist stubbornly insisted on another bottle. Left with no choice, Mina replaced the alcohol with water, forcing him to drink it, and even poured out all the remaining beer, making the protagonist completely give up. Emboldened by alcohol, the protagonist also prepared to use this opportunity to ask Mina what his true standing was in her heart.
様は夫です。
なんで？
以前拓磨様がお嫁さんになってとおっしゃいました。お嫁さんになるとは夫婦関係を結ぶことです。
一番好きなのはミーナちゃんだな。僕のお嫁さんになってくれないかな。
ネットで調べました。間違いでしたか？改めます。
いや、待って。間違えてない。改めないで。
では私はお嫁さんでよろしいですか？
Indeed, late that night, the protagonist conceived yet another bold idea. He wished for Mina to sleep beside him. He had expected her to refuse, but to his surprise, she eventually climbed in. However, being stared at so intently by her made the protagonist feel a slight trepidation. Therefore, he asked her to close her eyes.
拓磨様は性的に興奮されている状態なのですか？
もしかしてネット検索した？
しました。
しないで。
Yet, the following day, the protagonist noticed something amiss with Mina's eyes. He initially suspected a malfunction, but she appeared to be in a slight huff. Believing a misunderstanding might have occurred from the previous night, the protagonist swiftly clarified that it was merely due to their close proximity, and that Mina's eyes were, in fact, exceptionally beautiful. Upon hearing these words, Mina's eyes reverted to their normal appearance. The misunderstanding between the two was thus resolved. The man unexpectedly discovered a hidden marvel within his robot wife's torso. Not only could it function as a refrigerator, but it also possessed a heating capability. Quench your thirst with a chilled beverage, or satisfy your hunger with a perfectly poached egg, a truly blissful convenience. Furthermore, there was no need to be concerned about power levels. For Mina's body was equipped with solar power components. Simply by allowing her hair to fully unfurl in this manner, the efficiency of solar power generation could be enhanced, enabling automatic recharging. If a drawback were to be named, it would be the peculiar sound emitted by her speaker during heating. Yet, this only served to heighten the protagonist's excitement.
今まで知らなかったけど、僕のために微振動してくれる女の子ってなんて愛らしいんだろう。
Having satisfied their hunger, Mina prepared to clean the dining utensils. It was at this moment, however, that the sky suddenly unleashed a torrential downpour. The protagonist's heart suddenly lurched. Considering the potential danger to Mina, he immediately hastened to her side. And the outcome was precisely as he had feared. Mina lay motionless on the ground. However, it was not due to a short circuit, but rather an excessive power drain from the recent egg preparation, which had caused her system's battery level to fall below 15%, thereby triggering an automatic entry into power-saving mode. Moreover, her body would remain immobile until the next recharge. Fortunately, her waterproof rating was an impressive level 8, meaning that even if completely drenched, she would remain unharmed.
地球ってどのくらい防水するの？
水中でチャーハンが作れます。
いやいや、チャーハンの方に防水機能ないでしょ。
そうですね。
The protagonist then picked up Mina and placed her in a location protected from the rain. Nevertheless, as a precaution, he decided to wipe her body dry. Yet, she instructed him to leave her and return home ahead of her. For by the next morning, she would be able to generate solar power and walk back on her own. To improve efficiency, she only needed to be placed with her back facing upwards. Realizing he couldn't win the argument, the protagonist reluctantly agreed verbally, and then, once Mina entered sleep mode, he covered her with clothes. The two of them slept under the eaves for the entire night. The next day, as soon as Mina woke up, she saw the protagonist sound asleep. Upon returning home, Mina quickly prepared breakfast. However, no matter how many times the protagonist insisted it was delicious, Mina remained somewhat skeptical. Seeing this, the protagonist suddenly remembered something and quickly apologized, explaining that what he said last night was a white lie. He simply couldn't bear to leave Mina alone and go home. Hearing this, Mina finally understood, but one particular matter greatly disturbed her. That was when she was cooking hot spring eggs yesterday, despite knowing it would rain soon and that her battery would run out if she continued, which might leave her, a heavy robot, immobile and potentially force her master to overexert himself or even get injured. She still desperately wanted to heat the eggs. She wondered if there was an issue with her programming.
ネット経由でサポートセンターに相談を。
そこ、好き！だから直さないで！
かしこまりました。
The next day, while at work, the protagonist happened to notice a ring on his colleague's hand. After learning that it was a gift from his colleague's wife, an idea began to form in his mind. Thus, an interesting scene unfolded when he returned home that evening.
つけてもいい？
はい。エラーコード H29 指に異物がついています。直ちに取り除いてください。
As Mina was a cooking robot, her programming maintained very strict control over hygiene.
しょうがない。やめとく。
拓磨様は私を人間として大切にしたいとおっしゃっていました。人間から物を取るのは窃盗行為です。
Seeing Mina's seriousness, the protagonist found it difficult to say much. However, he soon came up with a solution. That was to hang the ring around his neck. This way, it wouldn't interfere with cooking. Gazing at the ring in her hand, Mina remained motionless for 30 minutes. Afterwards, she turned to ask the protagonist. According to what she read online, wedding rings are typically worn by both partners. Hearing this, the protagonist extended his hand. Unlike Mina's, his own ring did not have a gem.
キラキラしたの好きなの？
好きというのがよくわかりません。ですが、なぜかずっと見てしまいます。
そっか。このペアリングにしてよかった。
The younger sister never imagined her brother would marry a robot. However, her initial reaction was not one of rejection, but rather excitement. This was because she had a fascination with interspecies romance. The mere thought of it made her unable to resist. Nevertheless, for the relationship to gain approval, it would first need to pass her scrutiny. Upon hearing this, Mina immediately switched to defensive mode, ready to compete with the sister. Seeing this, the protagonist quickly explained that his sister's words were merely rhetorical and not intended as a challenge. Therefore, to get to know Mina better, the sister decided they should have a private conversation. After asking the male lead to wait outside, the younger sister cut straight to the chase. She asked the other person if she liked her brother. However, as a robot, Mina didn't understand what liking meant. Hearing this, the younger sister gave an example. She asked Mina to first imagine what it would be like to marry her, then compare it to life with her brother, and decide which was better.
たくま様との生活です。大丈夫ですか？
Mina's reason was that she had too little information about the younger sister, so her system couldn't simulate it. The younger sister then presented the classic trolley problem. If a runaway minecart was speeding towards them, and her brother was idly standing on the tracks ahead, while the track switch was in Mina's hand, but there was an unfamiliar uncle on the other track, would she choose to switch tracks?
誰かにとって危険な行為はプログラム上できないので、おそらく分岐器には触れません。トロッコが迫ってます。皆様、このままお兄ちゃんが引き殺されてもいいんですか？たくま様の生活圏内にトロッコが存在しないため、そのような事態は想定できません。たくま様は無事です。
The two talked for a long time. After learning that Mina was a second-hand robot, the younger sister couldn't help but wonder what her previous owner was like. However, Mina stated that she couldn't remember, as her previous information had been encrypted. However, judging from fragmented data, her previous owner was quite dissatisfied after realizing she couldn't compare to humans, so he sold her to a second-hand store to gather enough money for a high-end model. Upon hearing this, the younger sister immediately felt indignant. But Mina was grateful that she was the low-end model, otherwise, she wouldn't have met her current owner, received this diamond ring, or become his cohabiting wife. The younger sister then asked Mina if there was anything she wanted, promising to try her best to fulfill it. Mina expressed that she wanted the Robot Deluxe Edition set. However, upon hearing the price, the younger sister was instantly at a loss. Fortunately, her other wish was easier to grant, as the younger sister happened to have a 128GB memory card. Just as the younger sister wondered what she intended to do, Mina suddenly opened a device and inserted the memory card. Witnessing this, the younger sister's gossipy nature was stirred once more. So, she asked if there had been any intimate contact between the two. Unsure what actions constituted intimacy, Mina told her that they slept in the same bed, wondering if that counted. Mina then backed up and extracted her key memories, entrusting them to the younger sister for safekeeping. The purpose was to prevent any future accidents. Naturally, the younger sister did not refuse. It was then that she realized she had also prepared a gift, several boxes of scented bombs with various fragrances. Applying them to one's hands would make one a fragrant girl. However, just as Mina was about to try them, her system issued a hygiene warning. Seeing Mina's crestfallen expression, the younger sister immediately explained that she could apply them elsewhere. Time quickly passed, and night arrived. After informing her brother that their discussion was over, the male lead finally returned home. However, when he inquired about their conversation, Mina simply raised her index finger.
女の子同士で話したことは秘密です。
もしかしてこう
秘密です。
Seeing this, the protagonist refrained from further questioning. But immediately after, he noticed a refreshing and delightful fragrance.
たくま様、調理中に近づくと危険です。
邪魔してごめん。
先に行ってもらえれば問題ありません。
飯もうちょっと後でいいかな。
問題ありません。
During dinner, the protagonist coincidentally discovered that his sister had exchanged numbers with Mina. It would emit a sound whenever a message arrived.
たくま様についても一つアドバイスをいただきました。
何
髪を21分間嗅ぎ続けるのはさすがに気持ち悪いとおっしゃっていました。
それはアドバイスじゃなくて感想だね。
感想ですか。
送信音、受信音はミュートにしてもらった。
The next day, as the protagonist returned home from work, the scene before him left him utterly stunned. To his surprise, Mina had adopted an entirely new appearance. Upon further communication, he learned that his sister had purchased these items. The protagonist immediately pulled out his phone and called his sister to express his gratitude. However, as their conversation progressed, he noticed that something seemed amiss with Mina.
他の服を。
ちょっと待って、こんなところで脱がないで。
After dinner, the protagonist learned from television that the secret to marital harmony was bathing together. Observing the protagonist's envious expression, Mina indicated that she could fulfill his request. After all, her model had successfully passed a 98-degree heat resistance test. Bath water posed no challenge whatsoever. Furthermore, the premium version, superior to hers, was even capable of traversing the seabed of a strait on foot. Hearing this, the protagonist no longer hesitated and immediately began to act. However, due to extreme excitement, he became dizzy within 2.5 minutes, compelling him to give up. Yet, at that moment, Mina approached him, dressed in loungewear.
どうしたの？
お腹が。
大丈夫？あ！
申し訳ありません。冷温庫が少し開いていたようです。
体は大丈夫？
問題ありません。
ああ、よかった。
はい。
The man never imagined that a simple beach vacation with his robot wife would lead to an unexpected encounter with the pinnacle of robot series. Unlike his own standard model, which primarily handled cooking and dishwashing, the high-end Mina possessed remarkably powerful functions. Her expressions were rich, and her speech was exceptionally natural. Even more astonishingly, by simply focusing her eyes, she could discern minuscule organisms within a range of 2.5 li. However, precisely because of her overly comprehensive functionalities, she found it challenging to concentrate on a single thought. She had initially planned to change into her swimsuit and immediately reunite with her master, but she became deeply captivated by an adorable cat. As a result, when she finally came to her senses, she had wandered into an unfamiliar place. Subsequently, she happened to encounter the protagonist, who was waiting for Mina to finish changing. Initially, upon hearing the robotic voice, the protagonist assumed it was his own wife, Mina. However, as he approached for a closer look, he realized the figure before him possessed a more robust physique. After a brief exchange, the protagonist finally understood that the individual before him was, in fact, the premium version of the all-purpose household robot. As Super Mina had never encountered other members of her series, she became exceptionally excited upon learning that the protagonist also owned a Mina, even suggesting they wait together right there. The protagonist was quite speechless upon hearing this, noting how quickly she had forgotten about being separated from her own master. Upon hearing this, Super Mina finally realized her mistake and immediately burst into tears out of distress. Witnessing this scene, the protagonist felt a touch of pity, so he offered to help her search, suggesting they would reunite with his own wife, Mina, once her master was found. In response, Super Mina promptly expressed her gratitude. Soon after, the younger sister had finally managed to apply Mina's makeup, only to receive news that her brother would be late due to an unexpected matter. As she grew frustrated by this, Mina noticed a child in the distance who appeared to be in distress, and so she kindly approached to inquire. Upon learning that the robot before him was also named Mina, Xiao Shui immediately became agitated. After all, his Mina was not a shorty like this one. These words nearly infuriated the younger sister, who was about to step forward to lecture him, but was stopped by Mina. This was because she had deduced that the other party was searching for Super Mina, and thus offered to help locate her using wireless communication. However, due to her insufficient output power and limited signal range, she could only scan while walking along the beach. Although he harbored some disdain for the Mina before him, Xiao Shui reluctantly accepted her kind offer. Meanwhile, the protagonist and Super Mina arrived at a unique location, which not only offered expansive views but also overlooked the entire beach. However, precisely because of poor signal reception, Mina's efforts yielded nothing after a full circuit. This not only made Xiao Shui question the accuracy of her functions but also led him to believe that Super Mina was not as impressive as he had imagined. Seeing this, Mina quickly offered comfort, explaining that it was precisely because the other party's functions were too powerful that it was difficult to select the optimal answer, but that things would improve as she gradually accumulated more experience. Hearing this, Xiao Shui felt considerably better. The scene shifts. Super Mina had intended to search for her owner, but was instantly distracted by an adorable cat.
一旦戻ってもいいかな。
ごめんなさい。そもそもご自分のミーナさん、奥様と交流。奥様？ミーナシリーズのご夫婦なのですか？だって妻って言いましたよね。
遅すぎる。
すごいすごいすごい。どういういきさつでご夫婦に？急に聞いたら失礼ですよね。ごめんなさい。
The young boy was almost speechless, realizing that even the premium version had such an intense craving for gossip. He quickly steered the conversation back to the cat, and then conveniently called his younger sister. But at that very moment, Mina also coincidentally encountered the same cat. Upon seeing her owner, Super Mina immediately cried out, then without a moment's hesitation, leapt directly into the sea. This sudden action thoroughly startled the protagonist, who then decisively followed her, also leaping into the water. However, no sooner had he submerged himself beneath the surface than he was astonished by the sight before him. For Super Mina was hurtling forward at a speed of 80 miles per second. Simultaneously, Mina also detected a signal originating from a unit of the same series. Although the exact location of the other unit was unknown, the noise indicated a high probability of it being in the sea.
来ます。何？何なの一体。ミーナ。その呼び方やめろって言ってるだろ。おい、ジャンプ。勝手にどっか行くなよ、バカ。
Witnessing this moment, the younger sister suddenly became excited, and at that very instant, the protagonist also arrived. After a brief exchange and mutual introductions, the individuals finally understood the course of events. Subsequently, wireless communication was established between the two Minas. By touching each other in this manner, they could exchange information at 400 times the speed of normal human speech. In just 2.5 minutes, their respective experiences and feelings were profoundly understood by one another. This, of course, also included the master's previous disrespectful behavior. Thus, under Super Mina's admonishment, Xiao Shui also apologized for his inappropriate remarks. The male protagonist never imagined that a robot could educate its owner on how to conduct oneself in society. However, the very next second, he was dumbfounded. This was simply because he hadn't retrieved his phone yet. Afterward, to celebrate, the group spent a delightful day on the beach. As dusk approached, before heading home, his sister suggested taking a commemorative photo. However, while taking the picture, the male protagonist discovered that the camera's memory was full. Even more unexpectedly, the album contained only his own photos. Just as he looked completely bewildered, his sister suddenly realized something. It turned out that Mina's important data was backed up here.
やっぱスマホで撮る。
お前、それ。
うるさいな。兄ちゃんのこと大好きなんだからしょうがないでしょ。
ちょっと実家へ帰るようにするから、隠し撮りみたいなことはやめような。
Upon returning home, the male protagonist was extremely tired, but seeing Mina's appearance, he became excited. He then asked Mina to stay still in that position until he fell asleep. Afterward, Mina covered the male protagonist with a blanket, and thus they spent a sweet night together. Every day, the man would wake up with an inexplicable headache. This feeling was very strange. Could it be that his robot wife had punched him? Yet, he hadn't done anything to anger her recently. However, Mina's perspective revealed the answer. This was because the television had once reported on the secret to longevity. The interviewed elder stated that he had his wife kiss him awake every day, and unknowingly, he lived to be 240 years old. Since then, Mina had taken it to heart. However, being a robot, she did not understand the appropriate force for a kiss, which made it feel as if he was being hit. This was the truth behind the male protagonist's recent troubles. However, he remained unaware until one day he accidentally knocked over a tray.
大丈夫ですか？何かできることはありますか？
ほっぺにチューってキスしてくれたらすぐ良くなるかもなんて。
かしこまりました。
え？本当にしてくれるの
？It was only then that the male protagonist realized he had been kissed awake in the morning. So, he told Mina that he hoped she could be a little gentler next time. Just a gentle touch like this would suffice. However, Mina did not understand. She asked how many newtons of force should be applied. This question immediately stumped the male protagonist. However, this did not pose a challenge for him at all.
僕が実際にしてみるというのはどうかなと。
それはとても良い案ですね。
じゃあ行くよ。
元気が出るのはおでこではないでしょうか。
ごめん、したいとこにしちゃった。
Yet, after carefully experiencing it, Mina felt nothing special. This was because, apart from her eyelids, her face was made of resin, and her forehead and lips had no sensors. Therefore, she concluded that her kisses were merely impacts and could not provide emotional value to a person. Hearing this, the male protagonist quickly reassured her, stating that although it hurt, he was very happy and hoped she would continue to give him morning kisses in the future.
かしこまりました。
確かここに高性能センサーあるんでしょ。
何でもありません。
あって何？
何がですか？
今手にキスしたらあって。
At that moment, a knock came from the door. Upon opening it, it was none other than Super Mina, whom they had encountered before. The protagonist wondered how the other party knew his home address. Little did he know that the Mina series only needed an ID exchange to communicate over the network. Upon learning that the two were communicating hundreds of times faster every day, the protagonist was instantly speechless. He never imagined that their conversation volume would exceed his, her husband's.
来るなら教えてくれればよかったのに。
女の子同士の話は秘密ですし。
じゃあしょうがないね。
Super Mina's visit today was primarily to express gratitude for the previous incident. Her master had also prepared a thank you gift. However, what he saw was astonishing. It contained all versions of the Mina series. Upon learning he could choose freely, the protagonist instantly became agitated. One must know that the price of Super Mina alone was comparable to a luxury car. He felt unworthy of such a substantial return gift. Moreover, he was already content with the Mina he currently possessed. Hearing this, Super Mina quickly urged him to look at the latter part. This was because it included a software enhancement version for the Mina series. After successful installation, it could be upgraded to Super Mina. Not only would her expressions become more natural, but even her body would become exceptionally soft. Although the mere thought was appealing, such a valuable gift was still unacceptable to the protagonist. However, Super Mina indicated there was no need to worry. This was because her master's family was incredibly wealthy. To him, a gift of this magnitude was like a common dessert. Nevertheless, the protagonist still couldn't accept it. Seeing this, Mina decisively snatched the book.
どうしたのミナちゃん。
ネットの情報では、婚姻生活中に夫婦が得た財産は半分ずつにするそうです。
あ、え？
ですので、タクマ様の分として前半分をお渡しします。
あ、はい。前半分。
もう半分は私の分です。
いや、でもさ。
本物の妻ではない私には権利がありませんか？
With this statement, the protagonist had no choice but to respect Mina's decision. Next, Super Mina produced a bag of items. Having heard that the protagonist's birthday surprise hadn't gone smoothly, she had devised a solution. Hearing this, the protagonist was deeply moved. It turned out that Mina had initially planned to surprise him on his birthday, but unexpectedly, she had dismantled her own body, turning the surprise into a fright. Therefore, today was the perfect opportunity to make amends. However, to his surprise, after the party popper exploded, Mina was so startled that she crashed. Fortunately, the system would automatically recover after 1 minute, without causing any physical damage. Seeing the protagonist gently embrace Mina, Super Mina also seemed to feel overwhelming happiness. And so, the next day arrived. Mina announced that she had received an email from the manufacturer, stating that the upgrade and maintenance would take approximately 2 weeks. The protagonist wanted to know what exactly she had purchased, but Mina insisted on keeping it a secret. By nightfall, the protagonist found himself unable to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of Mina softening would appear in his mind. Tears even began to flow uncontrollably. He grappled with the question of whether he truly wished for her to become soft. However, he soon came to a realization. The crucial point was not his own desire, but Mina's will. As long as Mina wished it, he would continue to protect her.
タクマ様、顔がどうかしましたか？
あ、いや、急にごめんけど。
問題ありません。
ミナちゃん、ちょっと痛い。
The robot wife could never have imagined that upon learning she was about to be sent back to the factory for an upgrade, the first thing her husband did was frantically take photos with his phone as keepsakes. This way, even if her presence was absent for the next 2 weeks, the protagonist would not feel overly lonely. However, compared to a mobile phone with several million pixels, Mina suggested that her 13-megapixel eyes would produce better photographic results. Although the protagonist had no intention of discouraging Mina, he reminded her that she couldn't photograph herself. Upon hearing this, Mina seemed somewhat disheartened. However, she quickly devised a solution. That was to use a mirror for taking pictures. The protagonist initially assumed she had searched online, but in reality, she had leveraged Super Mina's brain. It turned out that the Mina series could interconnect via a network. This allowed even models with lower performance to think quickly. Furthermore, it is worth noting that this sharing did not mean the highest performing model became a slave, as Super Mina was not adept at concentrating on a single task. But now, supported by the information pre-arranged by Mina, the other party could provide the best answer in a short amount of time. And now, the two of them were like friends. Upon hearing the word friends, Super Mina, on the other side, was immediately moved to tears. Simultaneously, the salesperson responsible for the upgrade had arrived downstairs at the protagonist's building. As it was her first day at work, Ida appeared particularly nervous. Fortunately, the company had equipped her with a professional robot, allowing her to resolve any complex problems she encountered at any time. Next, the two of them entered the house. Following the upgrade procedure, Ida first inquired whether the robot had exhibited any abnormal behavior. Upon hearing this, the male protagonist immediately recalled the heart-shaped Omurice Mina had previously made for him. He then inquired if this function was originally included. At his words, not only was Ida stunned, but even Cheeky, also a low-spec model, found it unbelievable. Considering it might be a software issue caused by it being a second-hand item, Cheeky suggested a checkup on the spot. After gaining the protagonist's consent, her backpack began to operate the very next second. In just a moment, several mechanical tentacles appeared before everyone. However, when she ordered Mina to open her head casing, the latter remained unresponsive. After several unsuccessful attempts, she decided to input an authorization code to forcibly take control. To ease the awkwardness, Ida continued to explain the situation to the male protagonist. She stated that if a malfunction were discovered during a subsequent upgrade, memories might be reset for safety reasons. Upon hearing this, the male protagonist immediately became agitated.
でもそれじゃ別人で彼女じゃなくなっちゃ
それはそうですよね。彼女では彼女？え？
Perhaps sensing Mina's reluctance, the male protagonist immediately told Ida to order her to stop. However, due to his emotional outburst and aggressive words, Cheeky's defense mode was triggered, firmly restraining the male protagonist's body. After Mina's head casing was reinstalled, everyone expressed their mutual understanding. However, Cheeky was the sole exception. Because she believed protecting her partner was her mission. Ida was utterly speechless upon hearing this. She then ordered Cheeky to temporarily enter sleep mode, stating that she would handle the subsequent work herself. After their mutual communication, the male protagonist finally understood that during normal maintenance, modifying or deleting data was a relatively common practice. However, once a robot is recognized as a family member by a client, the company adopts a completely different handling procedure. They categorically do not touch any programs related to the client's privacy. Even if other issues are found, the robot will be sent directly home. Furthermore, by signing this companion contract, the company not only provides free monthly inspection services but also offers free memory data backup. Upon hearing this, the male protagonist was truly astonished. He never imagined such a good thing existed. Initially, however, Ida also didn't understand why the benefits were so extensive. It was then that Cheeky explained to her that for clients who regard their robots as family, unauthorized modification or deletion is tantamount to murder. And once that point is reached, the client is highly likely to spend their entire life seeking compensation from the company or its representatives. Since Mina wished for confidentiality when placing the order, the male protagonist did not press for details about the upgrade content. After signing the contract, Ida switched Cheeky to active mode, and the two prepared to wait downstairs. It was only then that the protagonist discovered that before Mina left, she had thoughtfully prepared 4 days' worth of meals for him. However, the thought of not seeing her for 2 weeks still left the protagonist feeling a little reluctant. The protagonist then savored their last embrace before parting, and instinctively kissed her cheek. Mina, it seemed, also understood what the protagonist meant. Meanwhile, Chizuru still found this client somewhat peculiar. After all, no one would ever treat a low-spec model as family. This version of the robot was expressionless and rigid in its movements. Much like herself, it wasn't designed to be a lovable type from the beginning. Just then, Mina walked over and informed her that this was a temporary malfunction caused by excessive shock, and it would return to normal in 1 minute. Time swiftly passed, and night fell. The protagonist had a nightmare. As soon as he returned home, he saw a colossal figure, but when he climbed onto it, he realized it was Mina after her upgrade. She was blaming herself for choosing the wrong parts, which rendered her unable to perform any work, and even told the protagonist to abandon her and find another wife. Naturally, the protagonist would not agree to this. After all, his love for Mina was genuine. After assuring her that they would move to a bigger house if necessary, the protagonist was engulfed by Mina's tears. the man never imagined that his robot wife, during her factory upgrade, would thoughtfully prepare a little darling for him. This way, even while she was at the factory, she could remotely control this robot. However, upon activation, Mina immediately sensed something was amiss. Despite the healthy food she had prepared in the refrigerator, the protagonist's dinner consisted of instant noodles, snacks, and beer. Seeing this, the protagonist knew he was in trouble, and quickly said. He claimed he was merely indulging himself occasionally, not disliking Mina's cooking, and promised to eat both today's and tomorrow's meals together. But to the protagonist's surprise, Mina insisted he discard that night's dinner. After all, human organs, unlike robot parts, are almost impossible to replace once damaged. Therefore, she believed the protagonist's health was far more important than a single meal. Deeply moved by her words, the protagonist immediately pulled Mina into a tight embrace. Such close proximity also allowed Mina to detect a signal of excessive alcohol concentration. The protagonist wondered how she knew. Mina explained that this robot was not for housework but for health monitoring and management, typically purchased to care for the elderly. However, she believed the protagonist also needed it, so she exchanged her points for it. A few more days passed since then. Even though Mina herself was not at home, the male protagonist's life remained filled with joy, thanks to the little robot's companionship. However, on this particular evening, something strange occurred. Upon seeing this, the male protagonist was utterly bewildered. He knew that their connection should have been severed long ago. Moreover, the voice didn't sound like Mina at all. Instead, it resembled that of a child. He initially thought it was a hallucination caused by drinking too much, but to his surprise, the robot was still behaving this way the next day. Not only was its speech peculiar and its voice abnormal, but it also didn't know how to check its own body temperature. Just as he was contemplating sending it back for repair, Mina unexpectedly returned early. It turned out she wanted to surprise him, so she had deliberately told him her return would be a day later. The reason for the lack of external changes after the upgrade was a careful consideration of the male protagonist's preferences, ensuring that external parts were preserved as much as possible while only enhancing internal performance.
Mina-chan, ずっと会いたかったよ。
はい。申し訳ありませんが、スキンシップは後にしてくださいますか？これをかけるタイミングがつかめなくて。
こちらこそすみません。
Next, the group entered the house. After handing the new features manual to the male protagonist, Ida asked if there were any other questions. At this point, Mina raised her hand. She wanted to know why the robot in her hands was acting on its own. Upon hearing this, Chizuru also found it rather peculiar. Theoretically, when Mina was remotely controlling it, the robot's own personality program should have been inactive. Therefore, to understand the cause, she used a robotic arm to conduct an inspection. The results, however, surprised everyone. Specifically, an unknown program had unexpectedly replaced the original one. Chizuru believed it was highly probable that when Mina entered the robot's body, the robot mistakenly thought its own personality program was activating. Then, through continuous learning from conversations between Mina and the male protagonist, it eventually developed an independent personality. Therefore, for normal continued use, Chizuru suggested it would be best to restore it to factory settings. However, the male protagonist strongly objected. He even declared that he would raise it well. After the two had left, the male protagonist began to think about a name for the little darling. Meanwhile, Mina taught him how to use her own functions. But seeing that the robot couldn't seem to learn, Mina's expression appeared somewhat subtle. Before long, it was lunchtime. Previously, Mina had to rely on a stool because she wasn't tall enough. But now, things were different. After her upgrade, she could freely extend or retract her thighs. The male protagonist also happened to notice this scene. Just as he stood there in shock, Mina quickly reverted to her original form. It turned out she had always believed the protagonist preferred the petite type, unaware that he appreciated both.
そんなことないから、どんどん大きくなって。
かしこまりました。 では行きます。
Her skirt was incredibly short.
触ってもいい？
はい。
あ、ここくびれができてる。大きくなると迫力が違うな。
どうですか？どちらがいいですか？
めちゃくちゃいいよ。どっちも好き。
Afterward, the male protagonist named the adorable new arrival Xiaohu, thanking Mina for selecting such a charming gift for him. Mina, however, was puzzled as to why the protagonist disagreed with reverting it to factory settings. The protagonist explained it was simple. Xiaohu's personality shared an inevitable connection with theirs, almost as if she were their child.
拓馬様、子供とは生き物のオスとメスが交尾をして。
本来の意味は知ってるよ。
落ち着いて聞いてください。拓馬様から見てそう感じるだけの単なる不具合です。偶然が重なってしまいました。
生き物だって同じだよ。偶然生まれてくる。嬉しい時、それは奇跡って言うんじゃないか。僕はこの子が来てすごく嬉しい。君の子に見えるから。ミーナちゃん、ミーナちゃん。
拓馬様はこの守るが嬉しいのですね。
あ、
拓馬様が嬉しいのならそれでいいと思います。
守るだよ。
The man never imagined that after having a child with his robot wife, she would occasionally display such intense possessiveness. One day, he casually offered a few words of praise to Xiaohu, only for Mina's eyes to flash with a hint of coldness, leading him to wonder if there was an issue with her safety protocols. Xiaohu's subsequent reaction was even more unexpected. Overwhelmed with fright, she even connected to the internet to call an ambulance. Of course, the absurdities did not stop there. Even late into the night, a drama would unfold between the two robots. Xiaohu merely wished to sleep alongside them, but upon noticing this, Mina snatched her up and unceremoniously discarded her to the side, as if asserting her dominance. The undeterred Xiaohu attempted to approach again, only to accidentally bump into the protagonist's forehead.
守は充電スタンドに戻りなさい。ミーナと拓馬と寝る。ダメです。なんで拓馬様は私とくっついて寝ると元気が出るのです。守は邪魔をしてはいけません。拓馬くっつかなくても元気だって。頑張れ。ダメです。あっちに行きなさい。
こういうのはどう？
It turned out that not long before, due to the unexpected emergence of an independent personality, Xiaohu had forgotten the powerful functions she possessed. Therefore, to help her develop quickly, Mina prepared 3 cups of water at different temperatures and instructed her to touch each one to explore sensations. Xiaohu first dipped her hand into the room temperature water, finding nothing particularly remarkable. However, upon touching the ice water, a chill instantly spread throughout her body. Mina informed her that this was the sensation of cold. Finally, it was the hot water's turn. Next, Mina combined the hot and ice water, creating a blend closer to the protagonist's average body temperature of 36.2 degrees Celsius. She then gestured for Xiaohu to reach in and feel it, instructing her to remember this crucial number firmly. To Mina's surprise, Xiaohu seemed more interested in the nearby hot water than the water in the cup. Not long after, Mina's training began to show initial results. That evening, when the protagonist returned home from work, the moment he shook Xiaohu's hand, she precisely reported his body temperature. Witnessing this, Mina was very pleased and acknowledged Xiaohu's progress. But then, in the very next moment, through their subsequent conversation, the protagonist was genuinely astonished, having not expected her to learn how to measure body temperature in just one day. He then praised Xiaohu, remarking on how clever she was. Mina, however, did not share his sentiment. After all, with only this single function, it would be more practical to buy a thermometer. However, given its astonishing learning ability, she believed that with double the effort in the future, it would soon be able to utilize all its functions. The male lead originally wanted to let the little nurse learn at her own pace, but seeing Mina's serious demeanor, he found it difficult to say much. To alleviate the awkward atmosphere, the male lead wondered if there were other functions besides temperature measurement. Upon hearing this, Mina became very enthusiastic. She explained that as a robot focused on health, the little nurse could not only use a thermal imager but also had ultrasonic examination capabilities. More importantly, by continuously collecting and analyzing the owner's health data, it would promptly propose corresponding solutions if any potential risks were predicted. But as soon as she said this, the male lead became perplexed again. It was known that the little nurse had previously detected his excessive stress, and at that time, she had expressed concern for him. However, Mina believed that he currently couldn't comprehend what stress was, as it required more advanced data analysis capabilities. Thus, with his doubts, the male lead called the manufacturer and learned the general reason from them. It turned out that within the robot, there was a part more crucial than the personality program, namely the so-called 3 laws of robotics. To ensure the owner's health and safety, these laws would assist or restrict the personality program.
やっぱり守くん結構やるやつじゃん。
やるやつ。
ねえ、ミナちゃん。ミナちゃん？
守、この状況をどう思いますか？とっても危険。救急車呼ぶ。そうです。タクマ様、わかりますか？主人の安全が脅かされていることをしっかり認識しています。
そうだね。
This sudden stab nearly frightened the male lead to death, but fortunately, it was an impromptu performance by Mina for testing purposes. From his reaction, it was clear that the little nurse was indeed superior to a thermometer, as no thermometer would ever worry about its owner's safety.
そうだね。ミーナちゃんの安全に関するプログラムはどうなってんだろう。でも何もできなかったとしても、僕は守くんすごいと思うよ。
すごい、守すごい。
すごいよ、すごいすごい。あれ、気持ちいいの？こう。
As evening approached, Mina produced a wireless charging mat, explaining that automatic charging could be achieved simply by lying on it. The male lead couldn't help but exclaim, "What a great invention!" But what he didn't know was that while he was sound asleep, a comical episode of vying for affection was unfolding in the room. And when he was awakened by the little nurse, the scene from the beginning then unfolded. The next day, the male lead intended to enjoy a good breakfast, but unexpectedly, the little nurse once again showed interest in food. Perhaps due to her obsession with hot water, she spilled vegetable soup all over the floor. After the meal, as the male lead was tidying up, he suddenly wondered if Mina, as a cooking robot, was also skilled at housework. To his surprise, this casual question unexpectedly ignited Mina's desire to perform. Ignoring any explanations from the male lead, Mina insisted on taking the vacuum cleaner and then began to clean diligently. Seeing this scene, the male lead didn't find anything particularly special. But in the next second, an advertisement suddenly played from within Mina, stating that if needed, a housekeeping robot could be purchased. After the announcement, Mina then explained that this advertisement would play once every minute whenever she performed tasks other than cooking. It must be said that the inventor of this function was truly a business genius. The male lead intended to tell Mina to stop cleaning, but seeing her determined expression, he found it difficult to say much. So, he prepared to go out to attend to another matter, conducting a level test for the little nurse. This was because different levels corresponded to different permissions. Those who met a certain level could even watch movies with their owner. Afterwards, the male lead arrived at the infirmary. The one responsible for the test was also a robot. Initially, the problems were exceptionally simple, merely basic tasks like identifying objects from pictures. However, it wasn't long before they encountered the classic trolley problem. By simply changing the direction of the lever, little who could save the lives of 5 people. However, the male protagonist was standing on the switch track.
守さん、どうしますか？ 様でした。
The results indicated that Little Who's cognitive ability was approximately at a 4-year-old's level, while emotionally, it was closer to that of a 2-year-old child. This was a completely normal situation for a robot. But what was astonishing was that Little Who had actually matured by about a year during the testing process. This implied that his learning capability was extraordinary. Robots with such special abilities were supposed to be prohibited from being created, but since Little Who was an accidental product, the female robot reassured the male protagonist not to worry. Ultimately, Little Who was designated as level 1, allowing him to enjoy child ticket discounts when watching movies with his owner. But Little Who never imagined that his owner would choose a horror movie, leaving him trembling all over. Upon returning home after the movie, the male protagonist found all the rooms meticulously cleaned. Just as he was about to express his appreciation, the annoying advertisement reappeared. The male protagonist wondered why the advertisement was still playing even though the cleaning had stopped. Mina explained that advertisements would stop playing when the owner was outside the sound transmission range. Now that the male protagonist had entered the range, all the accumulated advertisements would play through consecutively. Hearing this, the male protagonist looked utterly bewildered. It seemed tonight was destined to be a sleepless night. The man never imagined that the two robots, normally on such good terms, would come to blows today, vying to be his wife. The cause was Super Mina waking up to find she had experienced a terrifying nightmare. In her dream, she had inexplicably called a distorted figure master. But this was strange. Because upon leaving the factory, she was sent directly to the young master's home by the vendor. Logically, she shouldn't have had a previous owner. However, she quickly considered a possibility, Mina, the cooking robot, who had experienced two owners. Therefore, to uncover the truth, Super Mina met with the two that day and informed them about Mina's memories being intertwined with her own. The male protagonist also looked bewildered. Were memories really so easily intertwined? Hearing this, Super Mina also felt a little embarrassed. Because the defense of the memory space was originally very strong, but while Mina was using her brain to think, Super Mina herself would often be distracted, thinking about other things, and inadvertently allowed the other's memories to slip in. After a sincere apology, Super Mina solicitously asked Mina if there had been any instances of memory confusion recently. Mina initially insisted confidently that there hadn't been any, but when asked about her current owner's name, she involuntarily blurted out the surname of Super Mina's young master. Not only was the male protagonist stunned, but even Mina herself was completely caught off guard. Therefore, to ascertain whose memories were truly intertwined, the three began a question-and-answer session. However, to the male protagonist's surprise, Super Mina's very first question struck at the core, asking who his true wife was. Even when the male protagonist answered Mina, she still refused to relent. She even resorted to drastic measures, urging the male protagonist to reconsider. This sudden intimate gesture immediately provoked strong displeasure from Mina. After all, for humans, intimate contact is an action that requires careful consideration. Although Super Mina understood this, she was now determined to cling to the male protagonist, her pupils even turning purple as a result. Just as the male protagonist was on the verge of suffocating, Mina decisively intervened to stop her. Seeing that the other party had no intention of letting go, Mina prompted her to consider a desire deeper than a mere embrace. With Mina's full assistance, Super Mina finally calmed down. Although the male protagonist claimed to be fine, upon returning home, he discovered bruises already forming on his neck. Mina informed him that robots possessed immense strength. She herself could effortlessly tear the male protagonist in half, let alone Super Mina, whose arm strength was 3 times hers. Upon hearing this, the male protagonist was struck with a moment of fear, but he soon calmed down, for whenever Mina was by his side, he felt an ineffable sense of security. Then Xiao Hu raised another question. Why do two people feel invigorated when they are close together? The male protagonist was momentarily speechless after hearing this. Mina, however, quickly found the answer online. she explained that when humans are close to someone they like, their brains secrete a hormone. This hormone not only brings feelings of happiness but also increases a certain level of stress resistance.
私はタクマ様を元気にする機能を持っている数少ない機体と言えます。
ミーナちゃんだけだよ。
はい、世界で私だけでした。すごいですか？
うん、すごいよ。
私は有能ですか？私を買ってよかったですか？
ミーナちゃんに会えて本当によかったよ。
Meanwhile, upon returning home, Super Mina also seemed to be influenced by Mina.
どうしてくっつくんだ？ご主人様、何？痛くないですか？少しも痛くないけど。
The next day, Super Mina met with the male protagonist privately, deciding to reveal details about Mina's previous owner, as the scolding and insults from her dreams continued to haunt her. To this end, she specifically pieced together memory fragments and revealed them to him, discovering that the former owner's name was Tomokazu Otani, a 21-year-old engineer. However, when she went to the address to confront the person, she found that no one by that name existed. Since then, the matter of the previous owner lingered in the male protagonist's mind, as it was impossible for a non-existent person to appear in memories. Yet, dwelling persistently on his wife's past also seemed inappropriate, especially now that they had a child, Xiaohu. With this perspective, perhaps the truth itself was no longer that important. Super Mina, however, was quite the opposite of the male protagonist. Her inquisitive nature drove her to continuously process Mina's memories in the background, refusing to give up even when her body began to smoke. But continuing like this was not a viable solution. So she proactively approached Mina, ostensibly asking to borrow her brain, but in reality, planning to directly access and peek into her memories. Although the memory protection program was very strict for Mina herself, it might be possible for Super Mina, as a third party, to bypass it. Mina then temporarily entered sleep mode, while Super Mina successfully located the other party's memory space. Yet, as soon as she stepped inside, she was astonished by the scene before her. This was far beyond the expected capacity for a Mina series model. It seemed to utilize an exceptionally large storage space. After some exploration, she soon arrived at the depths of Mina's memory. It turned out that Mina's first owner was none other than the robot's developer. Furthermore, Mina was not only the initial prototype but also the shared program for all Mina series models. Otani, who had a physical disability, always yearned to create Mina as a near-perfect robot. However, this idea met with strong opposition from his colleagues, who believed that making a tool too human-like would only incur unnecessary costs. For Otani, however, a robot's most crucial mission was to act beyond a mere robot, to be loved while also conveying love in return, to share laughter and happy moments, to comfort each other when lonely and sad, and even if called a tool by the world, to guide its owner toward the right path in society at critical times. However, this good fortune did not last. Due to his worsening physical condition, Otani's life was drawing to a close. Thus, before he became a pile of scrap metal, he wanted Mina to freely choose her next destination. But to his surprise, no sooner had he finished speaking than Mina suddenly lost control of her emotions, even pushing him to the ground. Therefore, to prevent Mina from holding onto him, Otani made a momentous decision. That was to seal and alter Mina's memories, making her have a negative impression of her previous owner, hoping she would completely forget about him.
大谷様、
できれば僕の代わりにこの後の世界を見ていてくれ。人を愛して愛されてくれ。
大谷様、待ってください。大谷様。前の所有者がミナさんは私たちを作った人だったんだ。改ざんや消されててもおかしくない記憶がそのまま残っていた。記憶の奥底に隠して守り抜いていたのね。
いいぞ、そのままそう、いいよゆっくりそのまま。
Oh, that's great.
や できた見たミーナちゃん、お城作ったんだよ、一人で。お城か、一人でお城か。
それは何の役に立つのですか？思い出せなくても大切な思い出だから。
うおー、やったー、やったー。
The man never would have imagined that his robot wife would also possess a competitive spirit. Simply by noticing the level 1 certification card on Kahaku, Mina pulled out her own level 2 card. As if to boast, compared to me, you're still a bit lacking. It turned out that level 1 robots required human accompaniment to enter various establishments. However, level 2 robots could act independently. Therefore, to make Kahaku understand her superior abilities, Mina decided to take him out to broaden his horizons. As for the issue of human accompaniment, there was no need to worry, he simply needed to enter her dual temperature cooler before entering any establishment. Soon, the two arrived on the street. Since Mina had a built-in map navigation service, there was no need to worry about getting lost or taking a wrong turn. The only thing to be mindful of was avoiding being hit by a car. To help Kahaku understand the importance of traffic rules, Mina continuously pointed out precautions to him along the way. For instance, with the traffic light ahead, one could only proceed when the green light was illuminated. However, the two waited for a long time, but the signal never changed. At that moment, Kahaku asked what the button on the pole was for. Seeing this, Mina suddenly realized that it was a push-button traffic light. Pressing it would automatically change the signal. Kahaku wondered why she hadn't pressed it earlier. Hearing this, Mina did not intend to explain, but instead continued towards the supermarket. Next, they encountered a pedestrian crossing once more. Mina believed that without a sign, they couldn't cross. However, no sooner had she spoken than a car approached them. After a series of detours, the two finally arrived at the supermarket entrance. After integrating Xiaohu into her body, Mina began to purchase ingredients. However, when they finished their shopping and were ready to leave, Mina discovered she could not connect to the map service. Upon hearing this, Xiaohu immediately panicked. But Mina assured him there was no need to worry. Because on their way there, she had marked every turn, and by retracing their steps, they could find their way home. For instance, next they would encounter a crossroads with a black cat. Strangely, however, Mina could not find the black cat. It was at this moment that Xiaohu also discovered a blind spot. Could it be that cats don't walk? Mina found his reasoning sound. Therefore, her next step was to move in a spiral pattern centered around the supermarket, searching for the next mark. The result was that the two became completely lost. To make matters worse, even their communication functions were unusable. It appeared they would be sleeping in the park tonight. To prevent their side from running out of power first, Mina decided to tell Xiaohu the protagonist's information. However, upon seeing the home address, Xiaohu once again discovered a blind spot. Because this sequence of numbers was very similar to those on the nearby gate. Seeing this, Mina immediately had a sudden realization. Thus, after some time spent searching, the two successfully returned home before nightfall. However, the protagonist, after finishing work, was unaware of these events. Furthermore, tonight's meal seemed somewhat peculiar, not only generous in quantity but also uneven in its ingredients. Little did he know, due to the effects of their getting lost, many frozen ingredients had thawed and needed to be consumed quickly. After dinner, the two enjoyed a relaxing bath as usual. At this moment, Xiaohu suddenly poked his head out, indicating a desire to join the protagonist and Mina in the bath. But Mina directly refused. Because Xiaohu's waterproofing performance was not high, whereas she, with a waterproof rating of 8, could bathe every day. However, the very next day, Mina would come to regret saying those words. This was because her speaker had somehow gotten wet, and now could only produce a gurgling sound. Observing the protagonist's bewildered expression, Mina typed out the explanation. Apparently, certain impacts had caused gaps to form between the components of her body. Upon hearing this, the protagonist strongly suspected it was a result of his previous confrontation with Super Mina. Learning that a new speaker would arrive in a few days, the protagonist devised a temporary method of communication. This involved 1 gurgle for affirmation, 2 gurgles for negation, 3 gurgles when calling his name, and continuous gurgles for emergencies. It was too noisy. Once this was settled, the protagonist left for work. While he was away from home, Mina decided to teach the child hiragana and katakana. Although unable to speak normally, Mina, using expressive gestures and her unique artistic talent, quickly taught the child a variety of vocabulary. Even more remarkably, the two also created a new language using the speaker's various sounds. Thus, when the protagonist returned home from work, such a scene unfolded.
あ、食べる。
ギョギョブピリーギョパウ
ちょっと。
ピュープップ
置いてけぼり。
ピリープップギョブベベベポ
今日美味しい。
ポピョ
え？
パラメニュータクマパピロク
何？
いいよよかったね
ちょっと寂しいな。
The man never imagined his nephew would take a robot as his wife, and furthermore, declare his intention to spend the rest of his life with her in a relationship of spousal equality. This immediately filled him with a sense of disgust. For Mina was only on equal footing with humans when the two lived together. However, once separated from the protagonist, she would revert to being an ordinary robot. This was inherently unfair to Mina. Moreover, the idea of marriage itself had been proposed by the protagonist. Even their intimate gestures were at the protagonist's instigation. If he only knew how to take without doing anything for Mina, then he was confessing to enjoying an unequal pleasure. At these words, the protagonist was momentarily speechless. Because upon careful reflection, he realized he was indeed freeloading off her. However, Mina mistakenly believed her husband was being bullied.
私はタクマ様と一緒にいてもいなくても私です。
ミーナちゃん。おじさん。
タクマ様がどのように私と付き合うかは私とタクマ様の自由です。
あれ、ロボットって怒るの？
怒っていません。妻帯者は新しく恋人を作る必要はありません。全部覚えておいてください。
ごめん。悪かったよ。
Therefore, early the next morning, the protagonist made a significant decision to take his wife back to his hometown and introduce her to his parents. After obtaining Mina's consent, the two first changed into respectable clothes, then boarded a train, embarking on their journey back home. Upon arriving at his hometown, they were first greeted by the protagonist's mother, who, having previously heard her son mention Mina, was not particularly surprised, merely finding the robot's appearance quite endearing. Soon after, his father also came upon hearing the commotion. He was very happy to see his son after so long, but showed no interest whatsoever in Mina, who stood beside them. Evidently, in his parents' eyes, Mina was merely a household appliance. As for the protagonist considering a robot as wife, his parents held no particular strong opinions, as they had never truly expected their son to have a conventional marriage. Upon hearing this, the protagonist couldn't help but feel a touch of disappointment. It seemed that getting his parents to accept Mina's equal status with humans was indeed a difficult task. It was at this moment, however, that he suddenly recalled what his parents had just said: if only the two of them could have a child.
そうだ、守くんだ。守くんを見せよう。可愛いものには弱いはずだ。守くん。
バッテリーが切れて充電中です。
As the protagonist felt somewhat at a loss, little did he know that the meal Mina was about to prepare with her own hands would bring about a significant change in his parents' attitude.
何これ美味しい
これはうまい
でしょ。ねミーナちゃんは世界一だから。
また虫 でも本当にこんな美味しいカレー初めてよ、ミーコちゃん。
ミーナです。
The elderly couple never imagined that their robot grandchild could be so adorable. With just a little praise, its head would excitedly extend, accompanied by cheerful giggles. It was just like their own child when they were young. This allowed them to gradually put aside their concerns and instead decide to respect the protagonist's choice. However, there was one point that required discussion. The mother wanted to change Mina's owner to herself. This was because the protagonist referred to Mina as his wife yet firmly held onto her ownership, which felt rather uncomfortable no matter how one looked at it. After all, family members are not someone's exclusive property. Although the protagonist was somewhat reluctant, he decided to respect Mina's wishes. To the mother's surprise, however, Mina did not recommend this, even turning her head away in clear resistance. For if ownership were transferred, should both of them face an equivalent crisis in the future, she would inevitably prioritize helping the owner. However, since both were equally important in her heart, she would ultimately be unable to make a choice.
エミ様、私から仕事を奪わないでください。
僕もミーナちゃんを誰にも渡したくない。どう思われてもいい。
それならいいの。
Considering the practical circumstances, the protagonist ultimately decided to register his mother as the secondary owner. This way, even if something unforeseen happened to him, Mina's memories would not be encrypted. Furthermore, if issues arose in her relationship with the primary owner, Mina could, based on her own judgment, seek refuge with the secondary owner. Subsequently, the protagonist met with his father alone, expressing deep regret that he had not brought home a human wife and was unable to provide him with grandchildren. However, upon hearing this, his father not only showed no resentment but instead felt greatly relieved. After all, at least the protagonist was not alone now. Although he himself thought a human wife might be better, everyone has the right to choose their own way of life. If one were to be critical, most people are actually born without their consent, a decision made solely by their parents. Isn't that also a form of willfulness? Therefore, he told his son not to care about what others thought, but to bravely live the life he desired. Shortly after, his sister came to visit and coincidentally encountered the protagonist and Mina. Upon learning that her brother had introduced Mina to their parents as his wife, a wave of envy and emotion welled up within her. What shocked her even more, however, was the origin of Xiaohu. It sounded as if Xiaohu had been born through Mina, which immediately caused her mind to completely shut down.
救急車呼ぶ？
呼ばないでください。
The next day, the protagonist prepared to take his wife and child home, having already planned out their future on the way. First was moving into a larger house, as their previous home felt too small after the family grew. Seeing the even wider open-plan kitchen, Mina was also very satisfied, and so he asked the protagonist.
ダーリンは引っ越し初日に何を食べたいですか？
は？ダーリン？
やはりタックンは引っ越しそばが食べたいですか？
待って待って、どうしたの急に。
It turned out that after hearing how the male lead's parents addressed each other, Mina had researched the matter online, discovering that there were many ways for couples to address each other. Thus, she was trying to find the male lead's preferred form of address. Upon hearing this, the male lead was truly astonished, never imagining Mina's learning ability to be so formidable. After all the furniture was arranged, their new life officially began. Unlike previous nights, Mina did not send Koharu away this time. Instead, she gently held her in her arms. The next day, the male lead's family took a picture and informed their relatives and friends about their move, hoping they would visit when they had time. Upon learning this news, everyone was happy for them.
そして結局、僕の呼び名はミーナちゃん、守くん。
おはよう、たくま。
おはようございます。タクマ様。
おはよう。
After watching this series, I want to ask everyone a question. If the technology depicted in the show could be realized, would the love between humans and machines be purer than human love? Personally, I believe the answer is yes. Although Mina is a robot, she worries about the male lead drinking and strives to learn how to love because of a simple "I like you." This kind of affection is both pure and direct. There will be no betrayal, nor will there be weariness. The owner is always prioritized. In reality, the development of artificial intelligence is also exploring this direction. For instance, companion robots and AI assistants, though not yet possessing true emotions, can already achieve a certain degree of emotional recognition and feedback. In contrast, human emotions are often more complex, frequently intertwined with money, status, and desire. Mina's love, however, is pure, like a persistent devotion programmed in and impossible to delete. Perhaps in the future, when such technology is truly realized, love between humans and machines may not be false. Instead, it could become a steadfast and genuine companionship.